This is Privacy on the Ground, where privacy meets real life. Hello, and welcome back to Privacy on the Ground. This is part 3 of our mini-series on C2PA, perhaps better known as content credentials. So far in this series, we've discussed how C2PA works technically, how its open framework approach affects privacy, including in relation to data use, data sharing, and interoperability. Our second episode dug deep into how C2PA and an important related framework called COG relates to identity, including in relation to digital identity systems and identity regulations around the world. In this episode, we'll explore another crucial element of C2PA, its trust model. As a reminder, this series complements World Privacy Forum's report, Privacy, Identity, and Trust in C2PA. We published it in September. I'm Kaye, World Privacy Forum's Deputy Director and co-author of that report. I hope you'll visit worldprivacyforum.org to download, read, and share the full report. As a nonpartisan 501c3 nonprofit organization, WPF conducts in-depth research in the public interest, and our research is focused on privacy. So while the C2PA trust model and how it functions is technically complex, the goal here in this episode is to explain how it works from the perspective of socio-technical privacy and privacy policy researchers, while recognizing the necessary technical components of the trust model. Now, let's talk about trust. C2PA is not intended to directly determine the trustworthiness of content, but here's where it gets a little tricky. C2PA does have, as defined in its technical specifications, a trust model. Put simply, C2PA metadata is meant to be used as signals for measuring content trustworthiness, not unlike provenance documentation indicating authenticity of an oil painting or how an ancient artifact changed hands. The C2PA trust model is a process by which certified authorities who have been approved for inclusion on a trust list decide whether trust signals are valid or not. And there's another crucial element of the C2PA trust model to understand. If there is no C2PA metadata attached to content, that matters in C2PA's trust model too. By the very design of the trust model, if systems built with or supporting C2PA do not find C2PA metadata in content, the absence of C2PA metadata can negatively affect how systems operating in the C2PA ecosystem measure or interpret the trustworthiness of that content. And there are all sorts of reasons why a piece of content might not have C2PA metadata. If given a choice to opt in or out of C2PA use, a user like a camera owner or a graphic design software user may not want to enable it. They might take a photo with a camera that does not support C2PA or use design software to edit an image or video or audio file that does not support it. A file might include C2PA metadata featuring certifications that are deemed no longer valid. Or the C2PA metadata could be removed. This is a common practice called metadata stripping. It can happen when images or other content are uploaded to social media platforms or shared in encrypted messaging apps, for example. So if there is no C2PA metadata, or if there are gaps in C2PA metadata, it can negatively affect how the trustworthiness of that content is measured. Okay, let's dig into the actual technical components of that C2PA trust model. So the C2PA technical specs, they state that C2PA should not provide value judgments regarding whether provenance-related metadata is good or bad, or whether or not a content creator or entity involved in producing or altering content is trustworthy. Instead, and this is from the chair of the C2PA Technical Working Group, the C2PA trust model process is designed to measure trustworthiness of the signer of the data. So what is a signer? Signers, that's SIGNERS, are device hardware and software makers or media publishers or app providers. They create assertions about a media file. In other words, the signers assert information about the file. So think of a mobile phone built to generate C2PA metadata assertions. Some exist today already. The phone could automatically produce assertions about the origin of a photo captured with the phone camera. It could also automatically generate assertions about actions taken to alter that photo. For instance, if the phone's photo software was used to touch up the image or adjust its size, or if an AI filter was used. There are some additional layers of this process, but to put it simply, phones, cameras, or other signers essentially sign off on that information using a cryptographic tamper-evident process intended to help detect unauthorized tampering with the information. And all the various layers of that information get bundled into a C2PA manifest that lives inside the content file or is attached and stored externally. One way C2PA is used is by apps designed to read and verify those C2PA metadata assertions to help indicate the trustworthiness of a media file, like one of those photos shot with a phone camera. A C2PA validator, such as a content provenance verification app, could use a validation algorithm to assess that metadata, checking whether the cryptographic values associated with the metadata match the values associated with that specific content file. Based on that process, validators then decide whether the metadata is valid or trusted or not. There's more to this process, but let's stop here for a moment. What I've been discussing here is how C2PA metadata is created and the process C2PA uses to check and validate that information. But as I said, there are lots of reasons a media file may not have any C2PA metadata or could have gaps in C2PA metadata. C2PA is meant to be used anywhere and everywhere around the world, so it's important to consider people in all sorts of situations. Consider a photo editor using software that does not feature C2PA capabilities, someone documenting an event who chooses not to enable C2PA for privacy reasons, or a content creator who makes a video using an older phone that doesn't feature C2PA. At least right now, there are only a couple types of phones and a few types of cameras that enable C2PA. That means the wide majority of images, videos, audio files, documents, and other media today does not have C2PA metadata associated with it. If systems like verifier apps do not see C2PA metadata or don't detect any valid signatures in the metadata, by design, C2PA considers this to be kind of a crack or a break in the chain of provenance information. And removal of C2PA metadata, like happens with metadata stripping, can also break the content provenance chain. If there's a gap or break in the provenance chain, the C2PA trust model sees that as a signal that the media file contains possibly invalid or untrusted alterations to the media file. So I talked about those C2PA validators like verification apps. A validator can label a C2PA manifest as, quote, unknown. It might do that if it encounters a manifest that uses a version of C2PA that it does not support. Now, C2PA has evolved quite a bit since implementers started adopting it, recognizing it in their own systems, and building various apps to check C2PA metadata. A total of 9 versions of C2PA have been created since C2PA 1.0 launched in 2021. As technical components of C2PA evolve, some systems built according to earlier versions of the technical specifications may not interoperate properly with other systems that are built with more recent versions. This interoperability, the ability for a wide array of systems to be able to speak the same language, to generate, recognize, or ingest C2PA metadata, it is a key part of how the C2PA trust model is designed to function. Now, of course, this iterative approach to updating software is nothing new. But we just don't know how rapid shifts in C2PA technical specifications will affect systems built in the earlier days of C2PA. We don't know yet how systems built to recognize the trust signals C2PA is designed to produce will work in the future as C2PA evolves and is incorporated into more systems. C2PA is intended for use to indicate content provenance in our information ecosystem, and it is often discussed as a way to help address problems with deepfakes and AI-generated disinformation in the hopes of creating a more trustworthy media environment. But the C2PA trust model is not designed to determine or detect whether a news outlet fact-checked the information they're sharing in a video. It isn't designed to determine or detect whether a person sharing an image online attempted to deceive, say by using a non-C2PA compliant AI model to create a deepfake. In a situation involving a nefarious deepfake, the C2PA process might only tell us that the media file does not have C2PA metadata. And I already told you all the other reasons a media file might not have C2PA metadata. In other words, the C2PA trust model process can tell us, sometimes, when entities involved in the creation and alteration of content used devices or software that is C2PA compliant. But it is not designed to fact-check or detect deep fakes or to detect disinformation. This stuff is dense, but stick with me. There's a bit more really important stuff to know about the C2PA trust model. After a quick moment, I'll tell you about some important emerging components of the C2PA trust model, its conformance program, and the C2PA trust list. The Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity launched its conformance program in June of 2025. The program is becoming an important component of the C2PA trust model. It governs assessment of the various devices, hardware, software, and other systems that generate, sign, or validate C2PA metadata. And the program incorporates a C2PA trust list. That trust list is a list of certificate authorities that have been authorized through the conformance program to issue certificates to those C2PA signers, like phones or cameras or software tools. The signers are also called generator products. Only products evaluated and approved through the conformance program are eligible to receive certificates from these trusted certificate authorities. As of mid-January 2026, the C2PA trust list included certificates associated with 9 companies, including mobile phone makers, digital security and certificate companies, and a design software company. At this point, in order for certification authorities and conforming products companies to arrive on that C2PA trust list, the assessment process only requires that they self-assert that they are meeting specifications and implementation security requirements, along with signing legal agreements. So, who controls the conformance program anyway? It's driven by C2PA's 11 steering committee members, which include several tech companies, a camera maker, an advertising holding company, and 1 media company. And right now, a new official C2PA trust list recently replaced an older temporary list that had a different and longer list of certificate authorities. Now, the new trust model will require use of certificate authorities on that new list. Here's what the C2PA FAQs say about it. Quote, content created using the interim trust list certificates will continue to validate in tools that use the interim trust list, such as the C2PA Verify tool. But it may be flagged as using older trust roots. Content created after the interim trust list certificate has expired will not be trusted by those or any tools. It goes on to say, though validators may choose to respect the interim trust list, they are not required to do so. That's the end of the quote. This process is evolving rapidly. We just don't know what the real-world impact will be on older content attached to C2PA metadata signed by entities on the older interim trust list. Content that may have been created by people or organizations with limited budget, tech resources, or staff to keep up to speed on these technical changes. All this brings us back to what I discussed in the beginning of this episode about how if a media file does not include any C2PA metadata at all, or include C2PA metadata with certifications that are no longer valid, that gap in the content provenance chain, that break in the content provenance chain, could lead to validation systems and others looking to C2PA metadata to gauge media trustworthiness to deem that content untrustworthy. By design, this is how the C2PA trust model works. If you're interested in getting more detail about how C2PA works, about use of identity and digital identity systems in relation to C2PA, about how systems built with and supporting C2PA interoperate and exchange data, and about how the C2PA trust model and how C2PA metadata is used as a signal of trustworthiness, there's a lot more detail in World Privacy Forum's report, Privacy, Identity, and Trust in C2PA at worldprivacyforum.org. I'm Kaye. Thanks so much for listening.